ఓకే. ఇక్కడ మనం ఆహ్, ఇక్కడ ఆడియో ఆన్ మ్యూట్‌లో పెట్టుకోవాలనుకుంటే మ్యూటు. మీకు ఇనిపిస్తుందా?
నాకు వినపడతంది. జూమ్ మీటింగ్ అక్కడ ఆన్ చేశారు.
ఓకే. ఓకే. మ్యూట్ కొడతాను.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello, sir. Your voice is audible, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening,
Good evening,
sir.
everybody. Good evening, everybody. So we have 37 participants. Anyhow, okay. Shall we start? May I share the screen now?
Okay, sir.
Is this visible, everybody?
Yes, sir. It's visible, sir.
Okay, right. So good morning, everybody. Sorry, good evening. Shall we start this webinar?
Madhucharan sir will start, sir. First.
Good evening, all the participants. Welcome to Pharma Talk webinar series 2.0, organized by Dhanvantri Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences, Sujata Nagar, Kottagudem. The college was established in the year 2007 by the well-experienced, reputed doctor professionals in Kottagudem with the aim of imparting excellence in the field of pharmacy. And the college offering courses like B Pharma, M Pharma, M Pharma in the specializations of pharmaceutics and pharma analysis. Dr. A. Bhaskar Garu, MBBS, MD, pediatrician, is the chairman of Dhanvantri Educational Society. To outbreak the and fight against COVID-19, our college have previously organized Pharma Talk webinar series in the month of May from 21st to 24th, 2020 with the theme Formulation Development End-to-End, with the huge success and good reviews received from students, faculty, and pharma professionals all over India, and conducting interesting pharma end-to-end sections. And the strength gained from the first webinar series, we are very happy to announce and conduct Pharma Talk webinar series 2.0 on June 7th and 9th with the theme Scientific Discussion on Pharmaceutical Technology, an interactive discussion for undergraduates. On June 7th, first day, first section started with the Honorable Speaker, Dr. Nandakumar, Professor at MGR University, Chennai, on nanotechnology sections. Today, the Honorable Speaker, Dr. P.V. Ravikant, M.Pharm from MGR University, Chennai, Tamil Nadu, and PhD from Andhra University, Visakhapatnam. He has 13 years teaching experience in the field of pharmacy. At present, he is working as HOD in pharmaceutics at Dhanvantri Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences, Kottagudem. Today, Dr. P.V. Ravikant came forward to explain the topic in formulation of injectables and industrial insight to outbreak this COVID-19 and this lockdown period. So we, Dhanvantri Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences, cordially invites Dr. P.V. Ravikant sir to continue his lecture.
Thanks, Madhucharan. Thanks for the introduction.
Thank you, sir.
Today, I'm going to tell about formulation of injectables, especially in industrial point of view. This is the outlook of my presentation. First, we are going to see the definitions, basic definitions that we encounter during the discussion. And second, requirements for parenteral preparations. There are certain requirements for preparing parenteral preparations. Just like solid orals, these parenteral formulations have some unique characteristics To achieve them, we have some requirements. So we are going to see about them. Next one is official type of injectables. And the fourth one, formulation of parenterals. In this particular topic, we are going to see briefly how we are going to formulate a parenteral formulation. Finally, I give some insight about formulation development in a industrial point of view. Coming to basic definitions, we all know that parenterals are nothing but the formulations that are given other than the oral route. You know the basic definitions. You might be studied in your B Pharmacy or M Pharmacy. And next, in the British Pharmacopoeia, parenteral formulations are defined like this. Parenteral preparations are sterile preparations intended for administration by injection, infusion, or implantation into human or animal bodies. So these are the sterile preparations. Unlike solid orals, these are sterile, and these are intended for injection, infusion, or implantation into the human or animal bodies. The WHO is elaborated this definition and said these are sterile, pyrogen-free liquids or solids containing one or more active ingredients packed in either single dose or multi-dose containers. So this particular definition will give complete insight about injectables. So the injectable should be sterile and also it should be pyrogen-free. We see the basic difference between these two in our next slides. And also it would be a liquid formulation or it would be a solid dosage form, like lyophilized cake. Lyophilized cake is intended for reconstitution with the WFI. So it would be a solid dosage form also, or it would contain one or more active ingredients packed in either single dose or multi-dose containers. So this gives a complete picture about parenteral formulation. Next definition, sterility. We all know sterility means, it is a state that complete destruction of all living organisms and their spores or their complete removal from the formulation. So once if we tell our formulation is sterile, that means that there should not be any living microorganism or spores in that particular formulation. Next, aseptic processing or packaging means the filling of a commercially sterilized cooled product into a pre-sterilized containers, followed by aseptic hermetical sealing with a pre-sterilized closures in an atmosphere free of microorganisms and atmospheric particles is limited. So aseptic processing actually is important. Sometimes, especially it is very critical when we cannot achieve the sterility in any other means. So that in the process itself, we take care in such a way that there will not be any introduction of the microorganisms. In some cases, we may have to prepare our formulation in a laminar airflow cabinets, so that there will be no microorganisms introduced in our formulation. Next one, pyrogens. It is very important definition. Everybody know about this one. Basically, these are lipopolysaccharides that are introduced with the gram-negative bacteria. Lipopolysaccharides are present in the cell wall structure of the microorganisms. When the microorganisms are died, these pyrogens, they will be unfolded and will be introduced in our formulation. For example, if we are using WFI as our vehicle in our formulation, certainly there will be a pyrogens. Say, for example, if you are using some excipients like albumin or mannitol, etc., which are natural in origin, there will be pyrogens present in it. If you take any excipient or anything which is natural in origin, there are many chances that that these pyrogens are present. So these pyrogens have some problems. They especially they induces the temperature. It causes a rise in body temperature. So that's why it is very essential to eliminate these pyrogens. Pyrogens, even they will be filtered. They will be filtered. Unlike microorganisms, we cannot remove them completely. That is why we have to take care to eliminate them in the process itself. Next, requirements for the parental preparations. This particular slide is very important. This slide introduces you the unique characteristics of the parental formulations. See, if you see the first one, it should be sterile. I told you already. Sterile means the formulation should be free from microorganisms. Next, the product must be free from pyrogens. I told you already what pyrogen means, so that your formulation should be free from these pyrogens also. Third one is it should be free from visible particulate matter. It is very clear. The formulation should be homogeneous. That means that there should not be any particulate matter present in the injectables. If particulate matter is present, it causes severe adverse effects. So while manufacturing these parental formulations, there are certain personnel working in the manufacturing area who discard the vials. If they see any particulate matter in the vials, they just discard it. It is very compulsory. Next one, it should be isotonic. We all know that parental formulation should be isotonic. That means that it should be having similar osmotic pressure as that of blood. The fifth one is it should be stable. Stability is very important for the parental formulations. See, when we speak about solid orals, stability is not a big concern. Most of the times, your formulation will be stable. Say, for example, if you see the tablets, the expiry date will be 5 years, 6 years, something like that. But if you see the injectables, the expiry date will not be that much. The very reason is that liquid formulations are not much stable as solid orals, because the liquids, the chemical reactions are very easy in the liquid state when compared with the solid state. So that stability is very essential for the parental formulations. Products must be compatible. As I told you, the reactions are very easy in the liquid formulation. So that, compatibility is a big issue with the liquid formulation. So that you have to check the compatibility of your product with the closures and vials, etc. Wherever it comes in contact with. The seventh one is APIs and other pharma ingredients used must meet special purity and other standards. See, for example, if you are preparing a ibuprofen formulation, see, we cannot use ibuprofen used in solid orals in the injectables. We have to select the right grade, injectable grade. Only then, we can use it in the injectable formulation. Even see, while you are selecting the excipients also, the same care should be taken. You have to select injectable grade for preparation of the parental formulations. Specific and high quality packaging also compulsory. Next one, official types of injectables. See here, there are 5 different types of injectables broadly classified. First one is injection. Say, for example, if you see injection on the label, that means that it is a solution. For injection, see, for example, if you see for injection on the label, that means that that particular injection is a lyophilized cake, that is solid dosage form. If you see for injection, that means that it is for injection. That means that you have to reconstitute your lyo cake before administration before administering it to the patient. I will show you the labels so that you will get a clear picture. Next one is injectable emulsion. That means that it is an emulsion for injection. Injectable suspension, it is a suspension for for injection. The fifth one is for injectable suspension. That means that it is a lyophilized cake. It is a lyophilized cake. When you recon it, when you reconstitute it, it becomes a suspension. So by looking at the label, you can understand what kind of injection it is. Say, for example, here you see, I just given 3 injections here. If you see here, it is written like for injection. That means that this particular vial contains a lyophilized cake. So that lyophilized cake need to be reconstituted before administering it to the patient. Next one, the second one, is the injectable suspension. That means that it is a suspension. Simply you have to administer it. You need not to recon it. The third one is the injectable emulsion. You need not to recon it. Simply you have to administer. But the label says you that it is an emulsion, it is a suspension, and it is a lyophilized cake. So by looking at the labels, you can understand what type of the injection it is. Next, how to formulate a parenteral formulation. See, there are some certain critical things that you have to consider while preparing a formulation. First one is that you have to select appropriate vehicle. Vehicle is very important and it is also very critical. And the volume of injection, it is also very critical because you see the volume itself determines the volume of the vial. Say for example, if you are able to prepare a 10 ml of injection instead of 20 ml, that means that you decreased the cost very efficiently. So that volume is also important. Next one is that adjustment of isotonicity. As I told you previously, osmotic pressure of your formulation is very important. You have to adjust the osmotic pressure that is equal to the blood. Next one is pH. pH is very important for those formulations which are pH sensitive. Next, stabilizers. When your formulation is very unstable, you may have to add some stabilizers. Preservatives, you know that, and concentration units, that is also very important. Next, if you see, in order to maintain all these things, you have to have some excipients in your formulation. Say, for example, I'll tell you briefly. In fact, preparation of the injectable formulations is very, very easy. When your API is stable in one vehicle. Say, for example, if you take some X drug, if it is soluble in the water, your formulation is over. Simply you have to add your API in the vehicle, your formulation is ready. But things will not work like that. Say, for example, if I take the drug and if I add the drug into the water, maybe your drug is not stable in the water. Maybe it is prone to hydrolysis, so that you may have to take some other care. You cannot use the WFI. In that case, you have to use some other vehicle. Maybe your API would be prone to the oxidation, so that you may have to use some antioxidant. Maybe it is very unstable. You may have to use some stabilizers. Maybe it would be not isotonic with the blood. You may have to add some tonicity modifiers. So all these things are important. So you may have to add all these excipients in the formulation sometimes. Sometimes you may have to add 2 or 3. Sometimes you may have to add all these excipients depending upon the formulation, depending upon the API characteristics. You have to remember. Here I just wanted to mention very, very important point while you are formulating a formulation. Especially this is important for the liquid formulation. That is, if you are able to dissolve your API in the vehicle spontaneously, your formulation will be more stable. Say, for example, if I take some X drug, if I am trying to dissolve your drug in the vehicle, say water, if it is dissolving just like that, we can assure that will be more stable. It is not 100%. Say, for example, if your drug is prone to hydrolysis, we have to select some other excipient, vehicle. But if the reaction is very spontaneous, the reverse reaction will always be, slow. So this particular, phenomena is very important while preparing the liquid formulation. Say, for example, if you have to use certain energy to dissolve, say, for example, if you are trying to dissolve hydrophobic drug into the water, that will not get dissolved easily. You have to try hard. That means that there are many chances that the drug come back. That means that your drug is not going to be stable in that particular formulation. But if your drug is dissolving very rapidly in the vehicle, it will sit in the formulation for a long time. That is one thing that you have to remember while preparing the formulation. Next, which vehicle that you have to select? This is very important. Look, see, water is always preferable because it is very cheap and it is not harmful to the body. So water is very preferable. If water is not the choice, if you are not able to select this water because of so many reasons, maybe your drug is hydrolytic, prone to hydrolysis. In such cases, you cannot use the water. In those cases, you may have to use some other vehicle like ethyl alcohol, polyethylene glycol, propylene glycol. These are three vehicles, most frequently used in the parenteral formulation units. Say, for example, if your API is not soluble in the water, or if your vehicle is not soluble in the ethyl alcohol, PEG or PG, sometimes you may have to use some fixed oils also. Because, if your drug is hydrophobic, that can be easily dissolved in the fixed oils. Of course, it is not preferable, but if we don't have the choice, we may have to use the fixed oils. See here, these are all aqueous vehicles. There are different types of aqueous vehicles. We don't use all of them very frequently, but it is better to know about them all. Water for injection, sterile water for injection, of course, we use them very frequently. Bacteriostatic water for injection, that means that your water for injection is included with bacteriostatic. That means that it is already included with the stabilizer. There is no problem. Okay. Sodium chloride injection. This is important when you have to maintain osmotic pressure. Bacteriostatic sodium chloride injection, sterile water for inhalation, sterile water for irrigation. These are all used in different contexts, but most frequently used waters are water for injection and sterile water for injection. Next, look at here. As I told you previously, we can use different organic solvents like PEG, propylene glycol, ethyl oleate, isopropyl myricetate, and dimethyl acetamide. If you see the vegetable oils, here I have given few vegetable oils like corn oil, cottonseed oil, peanut oil, and sesame oil, castor oils, and olive oils. All these oils can be used as a vehicle in the parenteral formulations. Excuse me. The next excipient, we have discussed about vehicle now. Now we have API. Say, for example, you are dissolved your API in the vehicle. You may have to add some preservatives, in order to keep your formulation away from microbes. In such a cases, you may have to choose these antimicrobial agents like benzyl alcohol, benzethonium chloride, methyl paraben, propyl paraben, and phenols. These are the acceptable limits. You cannot, say for example, you cannot use benzyl alcohol more than 10%. You cannot use benzethonium chloride more than this 0.01%. So within this concentration range, you have to use these preservatives. Next, antioxidants. Antioxidants are important when your formulation is oxygen sensitive. So all these are different antioxidants. Those works, with the different mechanisms. And here I have mentioned, you see, ascorbic acid, sodium metabisulfate, sodium bisulfate, thiourea. You might be studied in your, pharmacy, B pharmacy. All these are used in this particular ranges. So EDTA. So all these are useful as antioxidants. They contribute. See, the range is very low. If you see the preservative, antioxidant, they are very minuscule. They don't contribute, to the volume or weight, very less. But they should be included in your formulation because of its significance. Next, very important, buffers. Buffers are very useful when your formulation is pH sensitive. You know that buffers resist the pH change. So we have to use buffers. These are 3 different buffers that we use frequently in the pharmaceutical formulations. One is citrate buffer, next one is acetate buffer, third one is phosphate buffer. Depending upon the pH, we use these buffers. Say, for example, if you take the citrate buffer, we can use this citrate buffer, for pH range between 2 to 4. If you take acetate buffer, you can use it between 4 to 6, something like that, approximately. Phosphate buffer is approximately useful to maintain the pH between 6.8 to 7.4. So depending upon the pH that you have to maintain, you have to select appropriate buffer. Here I have mentioned various chemicals that are useful to adjust the pH. You can use HCl, NaOH, acetic acid, adipic acid, benzoic acid. All these can be used in your parenteral formulations to adjust the pH. Usually, the formulations, parenteral formulations, pH will be between 3 to 10.5. Next, tonicity modifiers. See, if the osmotic pressure is higher than the blood, what happens means it induces a lot of pain, and also it causes destruction of the erythrocytes. So it is very essential to maintain the osmotic pressure of the formulation equal to the blood. Look at here, I have mentioned a few important points. The osmotic pressure of blood is approximately 300 milliosmoles per liter. Ideally, any sterile solution would be formulated to have the same osmolarity. Say, for example, you see in the market 0.9% weight by volume sodium chloride. This contain, equal osmotic pressure of the blood. If you take 5% dextrose solution, it contains osmotic pressure equal to this one, 280 milliosmoles per liter. So either you take 0.9% sodium chloride solution, or you take 5% weight by volume dextrose solution. They will create same osmotic pressure as that of our blood. So that's why you see in the intravenous infusion, doctors are, we usually see they inject your product into the saline or dextrose, so that there will be no pain at all. Next, intravenous solutions that have larger osmolarity value or smaller osmolarity values may cause damage to red blood cells, cause pain and tissue irritation. So if your formulation contains less osmotic pressure or higher osmotic pressure, either way it is harmful to the red blood cells. Next, we are jumping into very important topic, formulation industrial insight. So now we are going to see how to formulate a parenteral formulations, what measures that we have to take, and what is the industrial insight into this parenteral formulation. So while we are developing a parental formulation, we have to go through all these steps. First of all, we have to do the literature survey. In the previous webinars, Dr. Vijay have given a good insight about this one. Usually in the industries, we have to do the literature survey. We have to synthesize a plan before doing any formulation plan. So we have to review the patents. We have to visit different websites of different countries, so that you will get a clear picture about the formulation. Next, we have to identify the persons who supply API excipients. Next, we have to identify the persons who supply RLD. RLD means reference listed drug. So, you know, when we prepare a formulation, we have to compare our formulation with the reference listed drug, and we have to prove that these two are equal. So we have to procure reference listed drug. Without a reference listed drug, we don't have any data to compare. We are blank. That's why it is very important to procure reference listed drug. This is something, market formulation, but the suppliers prepare this particular formulation very carefully, so that it is not just the market one. So for example, if I have a formulation in the market, if it is a reference listed drug, if somebody asks me my formulation to compare their formulation, I cannot give the formulation intended for the market. I prepare reference listed drug very carefully and give it to them, so that they can compare and they can maintain some equality with my formulation. After I got my API in my hand and excipients in my hand and RLD in my hand, then I can develop analytical method. After I have analytical method also, then I will prepare a formulation. Without analytical method, even though I prepare a formulation, there will be of no use, because without characterization, I cannot tell that my formulation is good or bad. That is why you have to prepare a analytical method also before developing a formulation. After you develop a formulation, you can scale it up. Then you can go for exhibit batch. Exhibit batches, they will be done in the manufacturing units. So this is all about various steps we go through. If you carefully look into this flow diagram, you will clearly understand the pathway of this parental formulation development in the industries. Say, for example, at the first step, you see new project initiation. After we conceive this idea, we develop a product development plan. After we have this plan, we have to procure RLD and we characterize it. We get the API and we characterize it. We select a primary container and we select excipients. See, now we have RLD in our hand, we have API in our hand, we have excipient in our hand. So now we are ready for the formulation study. We start pre-formulation study, then we go to drug closure compatibility study. Drug closure compatibility study is nothing but after you prepared your formulation, you have to fill your formulation in a vial. The vial need to be stoppered or closed. You have to close your vial using the stoppers. So you have to check the compatibility of your product with the closures. So you have to conduct this study as well. It is very important because the closures are integrated parts. It is not outside of this. It is an integrated part, so that you have to do this study. Once you do this study as well, then you can move to the bench scale. That means that you prepare a formulation here. Once you prepare the formulation, then you have to evaluate. These evaluation steps, you see, these are entirely different from the tablets. These are very unique. See, look at here, force degradation study, pH optimization study, order of addition. For in the force degradation study, see, you will see, you will apply different conditions on the formulation, and you will get the data with the force. Say, for example, if you get the data, in the controlled conditions, if you get the data after 12 months, using this force degradative studies, you can get the same data within 3 months or 6 months. So these particular studies are very important to speed up your process. pH optimization is very important, especially when your product is pH sensitive. Next, order of addition. This is very important for the emulsions or when there are more than one vehicle. Tubing compatibility, light photosensitivity. I just clearly explained about all these studies because usually in the B pharmacy or M pharmacy, even in the M pharmacy, students will not be taught about these studies in the academics. I will give the clear picture about these studies in my next slides. But you have to see these studies, the list of studies, so that you will understand how many studies will be presented in order to complete a complete formulation. Once if you complete this formulation, if your formulation is optimized, then we go to scale up or exhibit batch or something else. Okay, now we go to next step. See, in all coming slides, only we will be looking about these things only. API characterization and RLD characterization and formulation studies. We are going to see all these studies in our coming slides. First, let us see API characterization. Say, in order to prepare a formulation, parenteral formulation, first of all, I have to have API. Say, for example, now we have API in your hand. What do you do? What kind of studies you have to do with that API? First of all, look at here. First, you have to see description, assay, related substances, solubility, identification. I think you might be familiar with all these things. Description means how it looks like, what color it is, something like that. Assay means whether it is 99% pure or 100% pure. You can see by looking at the certificate of analysis, you can understand what kind of API it is and what is the assay and everything you can come across. And related substances. Related substances are, something different from the impurities. As a student, you have to understand this basic difference. There is a difference between related substances and impurities. Related substances are inevitable substances. See, these are not desirable, but they are inevitable. During the synthesis, you will be carried with these substances. Impurities, you see, they will be accidentally come into our formulation or API. So there is a difference between these two. And the solubility, you have to understand where it is soluble. Identification, you have to understand how to identify it. Say, for example, by using the UV or HPLC, you can identify it easily. Every API have its own fingerprint. Say, for example, if you run a UV spectrum, every API have its own spectrum. Every API have its own, HPLC peak. So that is how you identify your API. If you see ibuprofen or paracetamol or doxorubicin, paclitaxel, anything, they have their own fingerprints. So by checking the UV spectrum, you can tell that yes, it is a paclitaxel, it is a ibuprofen, it is something else. So this is a very important. pH you will be given there, and moisture content. This is very important, you know, in some cases when you have to maintain dehydrating conditions, something like that. Residual solvent. Okay, sometimes during the synthesis, the API would contain some organic solvents. There are certain limits for each and every organic solvent. You have to identify which kind of organic solvent or residual solvents are present in it and the range of it. Only then you can accept that API. Bacterial endotoxins. Sometimes your API, contain bacterial endotoxins. Endotoxins means we have discussed about it. They have the tendency to raise the temperature. So we have to see whether the BETs or bacterial endotoxins are present. If they are present, what range that they are in. And the microbial load. Sometimes you see microbes would present, but you may have to accept it. You have to see what load, to what extent that they are present, that you have to verify. Okay, so these are very important characteristics. Besides these characteristics, there are some other characteristics also, but they are not, very important. For example, X-ray diffraction studies, you have to see that. For example, in order to check whether it is a crystalline form or amorphous form, X-ray diffraction is very important. DSC study you may have to do. Sometimes it is very important. Freeze drying microscopy. These are all important only in some cases, but in most of the cases, the test parameters given here are important. Next, RLD. Now you have your API in your hand. Say for example, now you have reference listed drug, or you have a formulation marketed in your hand. See, for example, it is not advisable, but for the sake of understanding, I will let you know. Sometimes, say for example, we are if you are unable to procure this reference listed drug, you can simply buy a product in the market and you can evaluate it. Say for example, if I have to market a nanopaclitaxel, say for example, if I have to procure it from Abraxane company, the cost of the RLD is very expensive. Instead of procuring it, I will do one thing. Simply, I will purchase the marketed one and I evaluate it. At least I get some insight about the formulation. If I purchase the RLD, it is always advisable. That is something you should do. But if you are unable to purchase it, at least you can purchase the marketed formulation and you can evaluate it, so that you will get a good picture about the marketed one, so that you can compare your formulation with the marketed one. That is, in the worst case situations, you can do that. Say, if you have the marketed formulation in your hand, you can do certain studies. What you have to do with the marketed formulation? See, you can do all these things. First of all, you can understand what is primary and secondary packaging material. Okay, say for example, what kind of vial they are used, what kind of stopper they are used, what kind of the carton they are used. All those things, you can understand. By looking at physically, you can check the headspace oxygen content. Simply, there are some equipment I will show you in coming slides. Using those equipment, you can check the oxygen content without opening, the vial. Simply from outside, you can check the oxygen content. After you opened the formulation, you can check the pH. You can check the osmolality. There are, there is equipment to check the osmolality, simply if you keep the sample, you will get the reading, as simple as that. Assay. In the industry settings, simply by giving the sample to the analytical R&D, you can check the content. So for example, if the paclitaxel is claimed to be 100 mg per ml, by sending the sample to the analytical R&D, you can check whether the 100 mg of the paclitaxel is present in that particular 1 ml or not. Related substances. As I told you earlier, related substances are inevitable before we know that these particular related substances are present. But to what extent? By doing some analytical technique, or by doing some analytical process, you can understand to what extent that they are present. Particulate matter. Particulate matter, as I told you, there are certain equipments. Using those equipments, you can understand how many particles are present in particular mm. Under light transmission, these are studies important to understand, intensity or something. Next, so if you have RLD, you can do all these studies. Besides these studies, you can do some more. You can check the water content and reconstitution time. Say for example, if the marketed formulation or if the RLD is lyochaic, you simply recon it. That means that you can simply add some WFI and see what time that it is taking to get reconstituted. Next, clarity. You can check the clarity. After reconstitution, you can check the clarity of the solution. Say for example, if it is a suspension, you can check the viscosity. These, say for example, these are all not general ones. For example, if it is a suspension, you have to check all these parameters. Particle size is very important, right? If it is a suspension, there are particles. That means that there are particles. You have to check those particle size and their distribution. Zeta potential. That means that what is the surface potential? Sedimentation ratio. How long that it is take to sediment? That is, that can be evaluated using this calculation. Syringeability. Say if it is a suspension, if it contains particles, bigger particles, you cannot inject it easily. So you have to check the syringeability also. Redispersibility. Okay. See, redispersibility. For example, if you take the simple cough syrup, we see distribute it or shake it before. Just like that, even for the injections, you have to see the redispersibility. Especially if it is a lyochaic, it is very important. Microscopic evaluation, that is something you have to do if it is a suspension. X-ray diffraction studies you may have to do. Differential scanning. These are all very complex studies. Let us not go into all these details, as it distracts the subject. But these are all very important studies that you have to do when you have RLD in your hand. See, I missed something. If it is an emulsion, you have to check the globule size and drug release. Next, this is very important, and I can say it is also almost last slide, but very important. See, now you have RLD in your hand. Now you have API in your hand. You are characterized your API. You are characterized your RLD. You have excipients in your hand. You prepare. Let us assume that you are prepared a formulation, well prepared, well formulation. Now your next step is that you have to evaluate it. You have to do some studies in order to make sure that your formulation is good, intact. In such case, you have to do some studies. All these studies, see here, First one is drug closure compatibility study. As I given some insight before, closures means stoppers here. See here in this diagram I am given. I hope that this cursor is visible to you. We keep this to the wire. So these are all integrated parts. That means that the product comes direct contact with these stoppers. That means that you have to be very careful. As I told you earlier, these liquid formulations are very active. That means that they can interact with the stoppers. That is why you have to do some compatibility studies. Say for example, here I will show you the protocol of drug closure compatibility study. Look at here, this is the protocol. Here in this protocol, if you see, we prepared a bulk solution or we prepared a formulation. After we prepared it, simply we keep our formulation in the vial. I hope that you know the vials, right? So in the bottle, just imagine, if you are not familiar with that, just you see the injection site. In those vials we keep it, and we keep the stoppers, and we place these vials in the invert position and in the upright position. Upright position means in the normal position. Invert means reversely. That means that in the invert position, your product comes direct contact with the stoppers. So that after we keep your product like that, I take the samples from the product intermittently. See, for example, here I have given one protocol. Look at here. I keep my product in the vial, and a few vials are kept invertly. Few vials are kept in the upright position, and I take the samples at a different time points at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months. Okay, at two different temperatures, 25 degrees centigrade, 40 degrees centigrade, and 60% relative humidity, 75% relative humidity. So at these two conditions, I take the samples and I check whether there is any difference in the product. See, obviously, in the vial, which is kept in the upright direction, there should not be any change due to the stopper, because it will not come in contact with the stopper directly, so that there should not be any reaction between these two. But the vials that are kept invertly, they come in direct contact with the stopper, so that there will be some reaction in between these two. That is why there will be some impurities introduced in the formulation. That is something we check using some analytical techniques. So if there is no reaction between the stopper and your product, then we select those closures or stoppers for our formulation. This is something about drug closure compatibility study. pH optimization study. In the pH optimization study, say for example, if your formulation is stable at 5, we see the fate of the formulation at two different pHs. Say for example at 7, at 3 also, so that we can understand to what extent your formulation is stable to the pH variations. As the pH is varying, we can expect if it is pH sensitive, definitely there will be a problem. If your formulation is not pH pH sensitive, there will be no problem at all. So in such a way we check it. Say for example, if it is very sensitive, definitely we have to select appropriate buffer and appropriate concentration also, so that your formulation will be stable for throughout the shelf life. Say for example, if the concentration is not sufficient to withstand the pH change, your formulation will be stable only for some time. Say for example, if your formulation is intended for 20, for say 2 years, it would be stable up to 1 year or 18 months, something like that. But if you take appropriate concentration, it will be stable throughout your shelf life. So that appropriate buffer and its concentration both are important. Next, autoclaving suitability. Why do we do autoclaving? Hello, Madhucharan, are you there? Hello, Madhucharan.
Yes, sir.
Ready? Yeah, are you there? Is it audible?
Yes, sir. It is audible.
Everything is fine, right?
Everything is fine, sir.
Okay. Okay, right. So next, autoclaving suitability. Why do we do autoclaving? Autoclaving is important to maintain the sterility. Say for example, if you keep your formulation at 121 degrees centigrade for 15 to 20 minutes, we can tell that your product is sterile. There will be no microorganisms present in the formulation. But we cannot do the autoclaving for every formulation because your product would be thermolabile. In such cases, we cannot do autoclaving. That is the reason, we can. That is why we have to check whether your formulation is suitable to the autoclaving. If your product, we have to check for the other methods to make your formulation sterile. So, for example, you may go to the gamma radiation. You can use, filters. Even using the filters, you can sterile your formulation. So, autoclaving suitability study is very important to understand whether your formulation is stable to the temperature or not. The fourth one is a tubing compatibility study. Tubing compatibility is very essential, not in the R&D perspective, but in the manufacturing perspective. See, for example, you have completed your R&D development study. Now your formulation is ready. Now you have to commercialize it. Now you cannot do manufacturing in the R&D centers. You have to do the technology transfer to the manufacturing unit. There, these manufacturing activities will be carried. So there, the people will be using very big containers. Usually in the manufacturing units, manufacturers use stainless steel 316 liters, big vessels. There, in order to change your formulation or this bulk solution from one tank to another tank or one container to another container, they use the tubes. Usually in the parental formulation units, manufacturers use silicon tubings. Silicon is very inert material, so the product will not contaminate it. So these tubes are very essential. That is why we have to, since your product comes in direct contact with the tubes, you have to know whether your tubes are, are inert or not. For carrying this study, there is another protocol. Look at here. This is the corresponding protocol. After you prepare your bulk solution, we transfer the samples into respective tubes. Say for example, silicon tubes or some other tubes that you use. We have to change your, we have to fill this product into the tubes. Look at here, I will show you one diagram so that you will get a clear picture. So this is a silicon tube. So these tubes are usually used for transferring your bulk solution or your formulation from one container to another container or container to the filling unit. So your product should not interact with this material. In order to understand whether it is interacting or not, simply we have to fill this tube with our product, and we tie up this tube with the thread. Then we collect the samples from the tube time to time. Since the operation will not take more than 24 hours, we take the samples up to 24 hours only in order to understand whether it is stable or not. Say for example, at 4 hours we take, 8 hours we take, at 12 hours we take, and 24 hours we take. So by taking the samples and analyzing it, we can understand whether is there any reaction between the tube or not. Next, light sensitivity. This is particularly important only when your product is photosensitive. Say for example, if your product is not photosensitive, you need to conduct this study. For doing this study, your product will be exposed to the light and will be checked whether any impurities or any related substances are introduced or not. Whole time study. See, look at here. Whole time study is important because while we manufacture a parenteral formulation, some mixing operations or some other operations will be carried in this stainless steel vessels. So this particular stainless steel vessel holds your formulation for some time. We have to determine the time that it can withstand without any incompatibility. For doing it, we cannot use these big vessels, right? In order to understand whether there is any incompatibility or not, simply we use these containers. By taking your formulation into this holders and simply by keeping this lid, we can understand is there any incompatibility between this this product and this vessel. As I told you, with the tubing incompatibility, even we do this study for 24 hours. After we keep the product in the holder, in between we take one sample and check for impurities. If any impurities are present, we can understand some potential risk is present, and accordingly we can take or we can select appropriate vessel for it. The next one is preservative effectiveness study. See, preservatives are important, as I told you, in order to keep your product away from microbes. In order to understand which range of preservative or to what concentration of preservative is effective, we have to select preservative concentration. Say for example, some if you select some X preservative, we can check the concentration at 0.3%, 0.6%, 0.9% at 3 different concentrations, and we can see at which preservative concentration your product is more stable. Sometimes you see, if your formulation is stable at 0.3% concentration, you need not to use 0.6% or 0.9% or more. So it is very important to optimize the appropriate concentration, whether it is a antioxidant, it is a preservative or anything. You have to use only appropriate concentration. It is not advisable to use more concentration when it is required lowest. Antioxidant, as I given insight about preservatives, you have to do this study in the same way. Osmolarity, these three are similar. by using different concentrations of preservatives, antioxidants, and tonicity modifiers, you can find out the optimum concentration of it. Next one is the freeze thaw study. You might be studied this particular one in your B pharmacy. In this particular study, we freeze it and we heat it. We freeze it, we heat it. Freeze it, heat it. By doing it, we understand the stability of your formulation. This is very important study, but this need elaborate discussion in order to make it very sensible. Next one is the order of addition. Order of addition is particularly important for the emulsions or for those formulations where we use more than one vehicle, or when the excipients are more. Say for example, if there are just 3 excipients or 2 excipients, we need not to worry much about the order of addition. But when the dosage form becomes very complex, or when the excipients list is very complex, then definitely the order of addition is very important. Next test is a filter validation study. This is very important. Filtration is very essential to make your product sterile. There are different filters available in the market, as I given here in this picture. This is a membrane filter. This is a syringe filter. In this syringe filter, see, if your formulation is, say, for example, 10 ml, simply you can take this 10 ml into this syringe and you can filter it out. You can collect it. The filtrate will be 100% sterile if the filter is a 0.22 micron size. Okay. So either you can use the membrane filters or you can use the syringe filters, depending upon your batch size. So you can select appropriate filter using this study. There are different studies in turn, in order to select a correct filter, which is which leads to very in-depth discussion. Since we have very limited time, I cannot elaborate on this one. Next, headspace oxygen content. This is very important when your product is oxygen sensitive. The picture shows here is OxyBaby. Simply by probing this one into your vial, you can find the headspace oxygen here. Say for example, your product is oxygen sensitive. You cannot maintain more oxygen in the working environment. So usually, if it is not oxygen sensitive, if you check the vial, the oxygen will be 20% in the headspace. But if your product is oxygen sensitive, that should be very less. Sometimes it should be lesser than 1%. In order to maintain this kind of oxygen limit, we have to spudge your vial with the nitrogen. When you flush your vial with the heavy nitrogen, your oxygen in the vial will be replaced with the nitrogen. So your product will be very stable. The 14th one is BET validation. BET means bacterial endotoxins. You can check BET by sending your formulation to the microbiological department. There are certain units, in the parental in the industry, so they will check and validate this one. Sterility validation. In order to understand whether your product is sterile or not, there are certain tests conducted. Using those studies, you can make sure that your product is sterile. 16th one, drug product vehicle evaporation study from pre-filled syringes. In the pre-filled syringes, see, your syringe is already filled with the formulation. They are ready for the injection. You need not to take it from the vial. They are already filled in the syringe. In that particular instances, vehicle evaporation is something to be evaluated, because if the vehicle, say for example, if the vehicle is ethanol, it has a tendency to evaporate. It is very important to check whether your vehicle is evaporating or not. If your vehicle evaporating, it leads to so many, detrimental effects. Say for example, concentration increases. Say for example, if you start with the 10 ml of ethanol, if 2% is evaporated, the concentration obviously increases. Say for example, in 10 ml, 100 mg is present. After 2 ml is evaporated, now your 100 mg is present in the 8 ml. So the concentration is increased, which is not desirable. That is why vehicle evaporation is something very critical for the pre-filled syringes. In-use stability study. In-use stability study, it is for multi-dose or multi-use products. Say for example, if your vial is intended for multi-doses, you have to puncture it again and again. You have to check the integrity of the rubber. Say for example, if you pierce the vial or rubber, once, it get damaged sometime, and it exposes to the microbial environment. That is why you have to check the integrity. For this purpose, in-use stability study is carried. 18th one is the sedimentation ratio and syringeability viscosity. See, these particular studies, 18th and 19th, are for injectable suspensions. For the suspensions and the emulsions, for each and every formulation, if you see complex injectables, the studies need to be carried are entirely different. There is no relevance at all. The studies are entirely different. For example, if you take the suspension, apart of the studies that we are discussing now, you have to do some other studies also. See, for example, if it is suspension here, we have to do sedimentation ratio, syringeability, viscosity. All these are very important. Apart of the studies that we are discussing now, particle size distribution, dissolution profile. All this comes into picture if it is a suspension. See, this is my last slide. After you are completed all your studies, you have to maintain all these records. These are not relevant to your syllabus, but if you understand it, it is appreciable. You have to ready with the API specification, excipient specification. Specifications means I think you know that. Like what is the SA limit, how it looks like, everything specification, packaging material specification, in-process specification. Say for example, if you are mixing, how long you are mixing, at what temperature you are mixing, all these parameters should be incorporated here. Finished product, you have completed your finished product, then you have to specify it, how it looks like, and what is its volume, what is its strength, everything should be specified. Analytical method validation, tech transfer. So all these documents should be ready while you are going to the exhibit batch. So after you completed your formulation development, you have to ready with all these things. Only then you are ready for the exhibit batch. So master formula record, master packaging record, sampling protocol, cleaning validation protocol, validation master protocol. each and everything, subject to discussion. Again, it leads to a lot of discussion, but for the sake of understanding, uh, you know, I just give some insight. In the master formula record, we just include our formula and few steps like, flow diagram, how you have to add, which way you have to add, something like that. Master packaging record, in this packaging record, how you are presenting your formulation. What is the, what is the primary packing? What is the secondary packing? Such kind of things should be included here. Sampling protocol, how you have to, how many vials that you have to take out in order to make sure that your product is formulated well. Cleaning validation, okay, it is very important. And validation master protocol, stability protocol. The stability protocol is very important. Okay, from each batch we have to collect appropriate samples, and you have to subject it to the stability, so that you can understand that your product is stable when it is in the market. Parallelly, you can check your product in the unit itself. So after you released every batch, you have to collect few samples and you have to subject them to the stability. Batch manufacturing record. Each and every each and every information will be recorded in this batch manufacturing record. This is very important. Exhibit batch summary report, physiological solutions. These are all, again, leads to big discussion, but these are all documents that you should be ready with before you are going to commercial batches. With this, I close my presentation. If you have any doubts, you can ask now. Madhucharan?
Good evening, all the participants. If you have any doubts, please ping me on chat box.
Anybody? Madhucharan?
Sir,
Did you get any questions here?
no, sir, no one is dropping a mail in chat box.
No questions are there. If anybody wanted to ask, they can ask directly. Shall we close the session, Madhucharan?
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
So we would like to thankful all the participants, honorable speakers, respected faculty members, and pharma professionals all over India from Dhanvantri Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences principal, management, coordinators, and organizers. In this regard, we would like to thankful our Pharma Talk 2.0 webinar speakers, Dr. Nandakumar, Dr. P.V. Ravikant Garu, for your insightful presentations, and we hope you to speak once again in the future webinars. We once again convey our special thanks in this regard.
Thanks,
Thank you
Madhucharan.
so much for giving this opportunity.
Thanks, Madhucharan. Thank you. See you all. Bye. May I close it now? Charan. I close it now.